Trigger warning. This episode contains uncensored discussions regarding sensitive subjects such as sexual assault, rape, home invasion, and trauma. It includes explicit details which may be distressing for certain listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Feel free to pause or skip sections as necessary. Additionally, resources for survivors are provided in the show notes for further support.
Eventually he left. You know, I wasn't going to tell anyone that he was there. I wasn't going to call the authorities or the cops. What I was going to do is tell my mom, and then have her figure out what we're going to do about this. But she did eventually call the cops, and there was an investigation, because at this point, the man was an unknown person.
You are listening to Jenny Clark on Awakened Souls. Welcome to the Awakened Souls podcast, where we create a space for stories that inspire the soul, heal the spirit, and illuminate the path through darkness. Today on the Awakened Souls podcast, I am honored to speak with Danielle Leukam, a powerful voice in the fight against sexual violence. A registered nurse, mother, and rape survivor, Danielle transformed her trauma into triumph with her memoir, 4 Pounds of Pressure, a memoir of rape, survival, and taking back my power. As an author, advocate, and founder of Wish, we inspire Survivor Healing Inc. She empowers survivors and educates communities. Through her work with End Violence Against Women International and as a member of the Survivor Advisory Group with the Governor of Minnesota, Danielle is a beacon of resilience, inspiring change and healing for survivors everywhere. Her story is not just a testament of victimhood, but a testament to the power of being a truth warrior, an unbreakable human spirit woven from moments of love, loss, and an extraordinary fight to reclaim her power.
It was like a 3.5 month process of, you were raped by a man wearing a mask. We don't know who it is. Now we need to find out who this man is. And from day one, I was believed by police officers. And then eventually, 3.5 months later, he was arrested. DNA evidence essentially found him, and there's a lot more details to this in my memoir. But he was arrested, and after a long court process, 2.5 years, he was sentenced to almost 21 years in prison, which is, for a rape case, which is a really long time. And so I understand that I'm an anomaly. Most victims, rape victims, do not see a courtroom, let alone their rapist in prison for 21 years. And I'm so lucky to have that.
November 17th, 2018, after a day filled with simple joys, watching The Grinch with her son, buying Christmas lights, and savoring an ice cream cone together, Danielle settled onto her couch with a glass of Pinot Noir. The clock ticked past midnight and the comfort of her St. Charles, Minnesota home enveloped her. But at 1:27 a.m., her peace was stolen. A noise at the end of her bed jolted her awake. A masked stranger, later identified as Zane Pedersen, stood over her. His 9mm handgun pointed at her head, its trigger needing just 4 pounds of pressure to end her life. For the next 5 agonizing hours, Danielle endured a nightmare. Her wrists were bound behind her back with zip ties, cinched so tightly that the pain was eclipsed only by the terror coursing through her veins. She was raped 3 times, each assault a violation of her body and soul, while her son slept in the next room. The criminal threatened her son's life to ensure her silence. Danielle shook uncontrollably, her body racked with fear, unable to scream, run, or hide. For 5 hours, she was held hostage in what was once her sanctuary, wondering if she would ever get out alive to see the next sunrise.
I was always the person that wanted to talk about what happened to me publicly, because for some reason, I don't know why, my body, my soul just felt the urge to do so. And I didn't know why, but now that I'm doing that, I'm seeing the effect that it has. I'm seeing that I can educate other professionals that work with victims of sexual assault. I'm seeing that it educates the community, it raises awareness. And also, I think not talking about our sexual assault encounters, it's fine if that's what a victim chooses to do, but it maintains normalcy for the abuser. It allows them to hide. Whereas me talking about that this man raped me he doesn't get to hide anymore because I'm talking about it, something that happened and he's in prison for it. So I like to encourage victims or survivors to talk about it for so many reasons, but also because your abuser doesn't deserve like the opportunity to hide anymore. We should out them. Anyways, so I started talking about it. I started writing about it because it felt good for me. So just like my childhood, I always was told like, do this, do this, do this. This is what you're supposed to do after trauma. And I did those things. I did therapy. I was on medications. But my body and my soul is also like, you got to talk about it. You got to write about it. You have to do more. And I just honed into what my body was feeling. And that kind of led me on the path of writing and speaking about it.
Wow. I really empathize and understand how much it must have taken for you to even put these things out there. That takes a lot of strength and courage to speak up and to be a voice for other victims as well, those who cannot speak and those who feel shame and kind of they cannot bring themselves to speak about it. Maybe the pain is too brutal for them to even talk about it. So I can understand how brave you must be to come out and do this. I wanted to ask you, how did you find the strength to keep going for yourself and the aftermath immediately after that? What you must have been through, and how did you find help, and what happened to your son in the immediate aftermath? I wanted to go through those steps first.
Sure. So the immediate aftermath, as I went to the emergency room at the Mayo Clinic, my aunt met my mom and I there because I was going to have a rape kit done. So my aunt met us there and she took my son to her house because we didn't want my son to be at the emergency room and part of the rape kit. So we left our house that day with no intent of ever going back. And so he struggled with, Mommy, why can't we go home? Mommy, I miss my friends, because his best friend at the time was our next door neighbor. So he did struggle, but within the month, I had him in therapy and the therapist, met with him and deemed that he was fine. But everything I did to try to heal was him first, my son.
Yes.
I know now that my son is autistic, but I didn't know then. So he didn't always ask the type of questions that like a neurotypical child would. So when I
Yes.
said, there was a bad guy in our house, like he just kind of left it at that. He didn't ask any other questions and he still doesn't to this day. So he's doing fine. But my mom called my ex-husband and he got on a plane that very night and flew home to help take care of my son. So my ex-husband really had a big role in making sure my son was fine and allowing me time to process and heal and start the steps of going back into society and what does healing look like. While being a mother had a huge role in just pushing forward, it was my community and my family that helped me. I had a lot of resources living in Rochester, Minnesota. I got signed up with a support group. I had a victim advocate. My sister flew home from Kuwait. She was serving in the National Guard in Kuwait, so she was able to fly home and be with me for 2 weeks. But without, and that's part of the reason why I encourage people to not necessarily report an assault, because sometimes, if somebody chooses not to, it's probably for a good reason, but at least get the resources. So I used my resources and I'm so glad that I did.
So I
So,
also
yeah,
would
I guess
like to ask you, was this attacker, was the perpetrator somebody you knew from before, or it was a stranger?
that's a good question. Yes. So after the 3.5 month investigation, and the investigators sat me down and they said, Danielle, we arrested the man that did this to you. We arrested Zane Peterson. And it was so terrifying to me because I did know him. He was in my wedding. He was a groomsman in my wedding. I'd known him for about 8 years at the time. My
Oh my
ex-husband
God.
and I, we were contemplating asking him to be the godfather to our son. So yeah, we were good friends. But then I moved away. I moved about 4 hours away from him and hadn't seen him in years. So he was never on the suspect list because he lived 4 hours away from me. And when I had brought him up as a possible suspect, because we were friends, but I was always afraid of him. He was very narcissistic, manipulative. He talked openly about his obsession with sex. But when I brought him up as a potential suspect, my friends and family would say, no, he wouldn't drive 4 hours just to do this to you. Well, it turns out he did. Yeah, so I did definitely know him.
So a woman's intuition is never wrong.
I know. Yes, I agree.
Although it's no laughing matter in this case, but when you have an icky feeling about somebody, it's usually on the dot. It's
Yep.
usually true, and I've have felt that many times.
Yep.
You've described the night of November 17th, 2018 as a moment that changed your world, right? And you
Yes,
talk about the 4 pounds of pressure it would have taken for your attacker to pull the trigger.
correct.
So I want to ask you, in that moment of facing death, did it shape your perspective on life and survival? Were you in survival mode in that moment?
Yes. Um, and it's something that at the time I didn't think about. It just felt like an instinct to me. It was definitely survival mode for sure. Um, and coming out of that, I feel like life is, gosh, when you're faced with death and you survive it, life is so different. I mean, everything's more beautiful, sounds are beautiful, colors are beautiful, everything is vibrant. Voices are beautiful and having options and opportunities, it's so empowering. And I feel like a completely different person. I feel like before that moment, I was content and just living life and doing what I thought I was supposed to do. But now I feel alive.
Good. It must have been a tough journey, but you made it.
Yes, absolutely. It's been tough and it's still tough and I think he's in prison, but when it comes time for his release or whatever happens, the story's never over.
Yes, because you haven't have you seen him after the incident, and you had you did you come to face with him?
Yes, in a courtroom. I went to every court hearing and then I read my victim impact statement to him in person. But I haven't seen him since he's been in prison.
Yeah, but then that's a kind of closure for you at least.
Yes,
I know it's
absolutely.
not enough, but you got to make him see that he did this to you.
100%. And I think for some people, people make mistakes. I think for other people, there's just pure evil and there will be no remorse and he will never regret it. I just don't think that, yeah. I don't think seeing him would ever be a good idea because I don't think
Yes.
there'd ever be a change in him. I think honestly, I just think he's an evil person.
You just need to close that chapter and move on with. I think whatever you're doing right now is the best thing you could do for yourself and other people who've been in similar situations. So
Yeah, yeah,
you've written so much about grief and not being something that you can fix, but which you carry. How
yeah.
did you learn to integrate that grief into your life rather than trying to just move past it?
Going to support group was huge for me. I wasn't going to go at first, but my family convinced me. And I learned a lot at support group. I learned that it's okay to not be okay. I learned that I was masking my grief a lot because if I mask my grief, then you'll be more comfortable around me. And I don't think, that's necessarily healthy. And I guess my recommendation for other people is if somebody comes to you and admits that they were sexually assaulted, don't try to fix it. Just be there for them in their pain. Hold space for their pain because trying to fix their pain sometimes can come off as their pain is wrong. And so I started to understand, now this is well after the fact. I've recently come to understand that holding space for other people's pain is, I think, in my opinion, the way to go rather than trying to make somebody feel better. At the time, I just wanted my sister to hang out on the couch with me and eat candy and watch princess movies because I just wanted to. grieve at my own pace, but I pretended to be
Yeah.
okay so that the other people around me would be comfortable around me. So hindsight is 2020. I wish I could go back and do it all over again. But now that I've educated myself and I understand grief and pain a little bit better, I was able to come out of it a little bit faster. But I would recommend anybody listening to use your resources and go to support group just to understand what you're going through.
Yes, of course. What was the hardest part of navigating the justice system after the assault? How would you say you coped with the fear of? I'm sure you were not believed, and there were times that you were questioned because women are not treated with kindness. I've noticed in this world when it comes to such situations, especially sexual assault, the empathy and understanding of what a woman has to go through is
Mhm.
really lacking. So, what was the hardest part for you?
That's a good question. And I have to admit, I am an anomaly again when it comes to the investigation and the court system for a couple of reasons. Because I had a female police officer, she was the responding officer, and she believed me, or she appeared to. Then I had the rape kit, and everybody in that room believed me. And then I had to, tell a different group of investigators what happened, and they appeared to believe me as well. All while this was going on, my house was a crime scene, and my house was full of evidence that this man left behind. So I felt believed during the investigation, but then when they arrested him, they found a video recording of him raping me on his phone. So not only did they believe me, but now they have video proof that yes, he did rape me because he video recorded it. And that's where I'm an anomaly as well, is that a lot of rape victims, there is minimal evidence. It's he said versus she said, or maybe there's DNA, but I actually had a video recording, and I think that really helped with the case. And I think, he took control from me for 5 hours, for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years. Like, even still to this day, I still suffer because of what he did. But now I feel like I'm in control, and him recording that video and having the law enforcement find it just gave us so much control in the outcome. And I'm so thankful for that. The hard part about court was, just the things that I didn't understand at the time. So, of course, COVID was happening. So, court hearings were delayed or rescheduled or on Zoom rather than in person. And we navigated through that, but it was just long and it was hard, and that's why I like speaking about it too and raising awareness, because I have a lot of support, from law enforcement, from the community, even from Zane's family and his community. I have support, but there are so many people out there that aren't believed. And I think the number one thing that law enforcement should do is start by believing. The first thing you can do to empower a victim, number one, is just believe them. So I think just little technicalities with the court system were frustrating. I can't say there was anything that went horribly wrong. That's why I like talking about it too, because so many times on podcasts and movies and documentaries, you see these horror stories about when victims aren't believed and justice isn't
Yeah.
served, and then there's a serial rapist. But I like to be a reminder for professionals, so for law enforcement, for victim advocates, for lawyers, that I am an example of when things go right. Believe the victim. When you do your job, when you investigate the rapist, the victim can turn out to be okay. And I like that to validate them, to keep actually working and start believing victims, and, you know, just put in the time and effort to believe the victim and do the work, because sometimes it can turn out to be a success story.
Her story begins in Rochester, Minnesota, as she grew up in a close knit family and she shared a special bond with her Irish twin sister. Danielle tells me as a young girl she was shaped by the challenges of her father's illness, which brought both hardship and a deep well of empathy to her heart. She was driven as a teenager and balanced school, sports, and multiple jobs, including waitressing, retailing, you name it. She showed an early spark of determination that would later define her. She tells me writing was her refuge, a passion that began in childhood and would one day become her voice for healing. Those early years brought a foundation of strength. She was building a life of purpose as a nurse and a single mother to her 3-year-old son, who was her greatest joy. But nothing could have prepared her for the night that would change everything, a night of unimaginable horror that shattered her world. Yes. What was the kind of support you got from your family and friends? And I also wanted to know how your ex husband and this groomsman's family related to you after the incident.
I didn't know there was such thing as secondary victims, but that's what my mom was. So my mom was
Yeah.
grieving and I was grieving, but I didn't know my mom was a secondary victim. So we clashed and we actually ended when Zane was arrested, we weren't speaking. My mom and I weren't speaking. We didn't talk for like a month because we had a falling out.
Yeah.
I was 30 years old at the time, and I've never not gotten along with my mom until we were both grieving at the same time. I wish looking back that I knew, that she was grieving too. My mom's a skinny person, and she lost so much weight that the doctors she works with thought she was dying of cancer.
Oh
And I
my
didn't
God.
know that. I didn't see it. All I could see was like my own grief and my own trauma, but I wish I knew that the people around me were suffering too. I wish I, had more empathy for that. But my ex-husband, he flew home right away. He believed me right away. He was really supportive, even though we were broken up or we were separated. My sister was a huge support system. And then I didn't I didn't hear a whole lot from Zane's community until he was sentenced. Then a couple days after he was sentenced and put in prison, I met with his ex-wife and I learned that she was a victim of him too. She was a victim of everything that she knew over the whole court process was only what he said. And of course, that was going to be 2 years of lies. So she had no idea what was actually happening until I read it in my victim impact statement at the sentencing hearing. So when a rapist rapes somebody, there's trauma within that rape victim, but there is so much more trauma than that. There's my family, there's his family, there's his children. His 6 children are all grieving too. I mean, his
So he was
oldest,
married at that time?
he what?
Was he married at that time?
Yes, he was married and he had 5 kids and his wife was pregnant when he was arrested. So he has
Oh
a 6
my God.
child. He's never met his youngest kid that I'm aware of. She was born when he was in prison or in jail.
That's terrifying.
So his wife had to give birth without him. Like, I mean, it's just horrible. Like, I was impacted, but his poor wife was impacted so much. He was arrested and never came home. So suddenly she's without his income. His 6 children are without a father figure and without his income. There's just so much more trauma than what's usually talked about. And I don't know, I like to bring that to light when I talk
Yes,
about
it
it.
has a ripple effect because it has a ripple effect on all the lives around you.
Yes, exactly.
So you call yourself a lioness, and I think I agree now listening to you. You call yourself a lioness in your journey.
Thank you. Yes.
When did you first feel that inner strength emerge after the assault?
Sometime probably very, very shortly after. I think it was so I was like a zombie for the first few weeks after I was raped. But then I had to start going back to work and start pretending like I was a normal functioning member of society. And then I did it. You just have to do it. And I just did it. And I realized looking back that I did what needed to be done to save my son and to keep my son out of this situation. And that's what I did. And a lioness always protects her cub. And
That
I
is
saw a
beautiful.
picture of a lioness and her baby cub, and I'm like, that's me because I will do clearly anything to protect my son. And I did, and I still will.
Are you a Leo by any chance?
Pisces.
I just have to ask. You're a Pisces, and that's where your inner wisdom comes from.
Okay.
Could I know your birthday? Yes, could I know your birthday?
My birthday?
Yes.
March 2nd.
Okay, you have a moon too, so you're highly intuitive. Wow. So, this healing journey and your writing of your book must have been such an intense process. How did
Yeah.
putting your story on paper help you reclaim your power? And your second book includes the stories of 12 other sexual assault survivors. What was it like to read their stories? And if you could share some of those experiences that could resonate with victims who are listening to us right now.
Yeah. Um, it was like 3 or 4 days after I was raped that I went and bought a computer and I started typing what happened. And then when I was doing it, I realized it felt really good to write about it. It was cathartic. So then I kept doing it because I had to tell my ex-husband what happened. I had to tell my sister, my mom, my dad, investigators. And it was so hard to this happened over 5 hours. It was hard to keep everything straight and in order. So I thought writing it down would save me time from having to talk to everybody about it. I could just say, "Hey mom," or, "Hey," to my sister and just read what I wrote instead because sometimes while I like talking about it, sometimes it was easier to just have somebody read what happened. And it was able to I was able to process it a little bit better. I think putting it on paper just helped for so many reasons. So I can't say writing it was hard. I think what was hard was editing my book, my memoir, going back and rereading what happened because, of course, they're reminders and it was re traumatizing and all that. But then when I shared it with some of my friends after Zane was sentenced, they're like, wow, I just didn't understand what you went through. Or if I shared it with another sexual assault victim, they would say things like, wow, I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the only one that felt this way. And then somebody from Zane's community said, you and I struggled with the same things. We were both grieving. So I think that writing about it really brought me closer to people, helped to make people feel less alone. And that's what
Yes.
inspired me to continue writing is because I want my memoir to be a survival guide for other victims. I want it to educate the community. I want it to, shed light to the fact that this is a ripple effect. There are secondary victims. It's more than just about me or the victim.
Yes.
And so I actually have 6 books now. Two of them are children's books, but I did recently publish a book that I wrote. I interviewed 12 survivors of sexual assault from the Midwest, and each chapter is their experience. And then I worked with a licensed social worker in my area, well, two of them, and they wrote a professional couple of chapters about each experience. So this book is more like a resource guide, so it has some references, some resources, and then just a professional opinion about their story. So, like a learning point from each experience. And I'm really hoping that this book helps to spread awareness too. It gave these 12 survivors a voice. Most of them, these experiences are childhood sexual trauma, which I didn't know that was going to be the case until I was interviewing these women. But it just sheds light on the fact that so many people around us are sexually assaulted and or sexually assaulted as children. We just never know about it. And
Yes.
it's just an alarming statistic and an alarming realization that I think more light should be shed on.
Yes, many don't actually come out and talk about it because there's a sense of shame in
Yep.
that experience. Yes.
Yep.
So, did you find the common thread when you were talking to so many survivors and with all your activism and the work that you do to help victims? Did you find any common thread through these stories overlapping?
Well, in my most recent book I did, a lot of the experiences were from their childhood. And the reason they said that they didn't report or tell anyone was because it just wasn't talked about. So whether they told their parents or not, some of them did, some of them didn't. They would say to me, it just wasn't talked about. Sexual assault was not like it is now back when I was a kid. So, I mean, it's good and bad, right? So it's bad for the people of that time that were sexually assaulted. However, it just proves that nowadays it's talked about more. And I'm so happy we're on this path. But I do think that more, I wish everybody reported. I wish everybody talked about it because I wish there was more prevention. I wish we understood why this happens and we could just stop it before it even happens. But I think the common thread was like, well, I was drinking, so I didn't want to tell because it was my fault. Then I had to, tell that survivor, no, it's never your fault just because you were drinking. And they know that now, but back then it was always the woman's fault. It was always, well, she shouldn't have
Blame
been.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just glad to see the growth that society has had in the last 30 years.
Yes, we are in an age where you can't keep anything in the shadows and in the dark. It's all coming to light. It's all revealed. The curtain is lifting, and everybody, it's just raw, and you can't hide anymore. Those people, the ones who are doing wrong, can't. The evil ones cannot hide anymore.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
and it's a good thing.
They shouldn't get to hide. We shouldn't let them.
Yes, they should be shamed.
They should be shamed, right? Not the
Yes.
victims.
Yes. You've also written a children's book and a thriller. How do you balance writing across such different genres? And what do these projects mean to you?
When my memoir was being edited, I was growing impatient and I had more that I wanted to write about and talk about. So that's when I wrote my first children's book, which is called Fly Like a Girl. That's inspired by my sister. She, growing up, she was always my hero. She still is. But she grew up a little bit different because she was a tomboy and she was always so athletic and so strong and so good at anything that she did. She was even on the boys football team for in 7th grade, but I think she didn't stick with it because that's just not what little girls did. Then when she graduated and went to college, I always looked up to my sister, but then when I found out, she's part of the LGBTQ community, I felt a need to protect her, which she didn't need my protection. But anyways, so my book, Fly Like a Girl, is about how boys sometimes think that they're better than girls or girls think that they're better than boys, but it's more of like a gender equality book,
Yes.
just saying like girls are better at some things, boys are better at some things, but it's really dependent on who it is. It's inspired by my sister, but I don't really balance writing books, to be honest. I just do what my body needs and what my heart tells me to do. So at that time, I had a story to tell, so I wrote it down. I have no rhyme or reason to, writing what I write. I just do what my body tells me to, I guess, honestly. And I just had inspiration for the story at the time. And so I wrote it and published it and moved on to the next one when the next inspiration came. My second children's book was inspired by a good friend of mine that died of brain cancer a month after I was raped. He traveled the world between his 20s until he turned 30 and he passed away when he was 30. And so it's just hopefully will inspire children to travel and to live life and explore the world. So, yeah.
That sounds beautiful. And I find it so inspiring that despite what you've been through, you don't have any hatred of men and you still
Oh,
talk about equity and you're not biased at all. And
no.
that's such an inspiring, yes. So I think you have a very kind heart. You are a very generous soul. That is what I feel.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's I don't have a hatred towards men at all because I think that, there's evil everywhere. It just falls into different people.
Has it ever affected your relationship, your love life? I don't want to sound intrusive, but I had to ask that question.
Yeah, so it's given me some control issues. So if I ever feel like I'm not in control of a situation, I don't like that. I feel like
Obviously.
now if I were to go out, and some guy grabs me inappropriately, I might overreact to that situation. I might punch him in the face. Whereas, just because like, I don't know, I just feel hyper aware and hyper like sensitive to my body now. But I did really struggle with dating afterwards. I had a lot of trust issues. I did develop my own boundaries though. So one of my boundaries when I would meet new people is don't ever show up to my house unannounced. And even though I said that, it happened twice. And I stopped talking to that person immediately. And they're like, "Why can't we talk anymore?" I'm like, "I asked you to not show up to my house unannounced and you did. Therefore, you do not respect my boundaries. Therefore, we are done." You know, it just kind of opened my eyes to like it's okay to have boundaries, and if somebody's not going to respect that, it's okay to cut them out of your life. If they're going to not respect that one simple boundary, what else are they going to not respect in the future?
Yes, absolutely.
So I just
So
I
how
think
long?
I've become more of a hard ass, I guess.
So you need to be in such a situation, and after what you've been through, of course.
Yeah.
And the men who meet you and who get to date you, they should respect that, and they should be actually honored to be with you. You're such a strong woman. So how long did it take for you to start dating and actually believe in relationships again?
Oh, that's a good question. So I was dating somebody actually when I was raped, but this man had a different body type and skin type than the rapist, so I knew he wasn't a suspect. But we stopped dating after I was raped because I didn't want to drag him through all of my baggage and all of my healing and all of that. We had just started dating, and then after that we just lost touch. But I started I started talking to people again after a few months, very, very, very slowly. But I always had issues like latching on, I guess. I would find an excuse to like, okay, no, like I'm not going to see you anymore. And it wasn't until the man that I was dating at the time I was raped came back into my life. And we've actually been together now for almost 4 years again. So I
Wow,
learned
that's
that
beautiful.
I can look up criminal history on the internet. So I did that before I started dating and before I started dating him and that checked out okay. So but it took me a while. I think I still have trust and control issues and I
And
always have my
that's
guard up.
perfectly okay.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay to do that after what you've been through. So, in your memoir, you write with such raw transparency. Was there ever a moment you hesitated to share certain details? How did you overcome that fear?
Well, it was
It
hard
must
to
have been
write.
painful. Yes.
Yeah, it was hard to write the specifics about what exactly happened while he was raping me. I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. The second time he raped me, I disassociated. And so I did write about that because, for research purposes, it's like that's what happens for education and awareness purposes. That's what happens, or that's what can happen. I honestly felt like I was watching myself be raped by this man. And it brought me to a different level of consciousness that I was able to be like, okay, what do I need to do while I'm being raped? Okay, well, you need to look at his skin color. You need to look at what he's wearing. You need to notice every detail possible so that if you make it out, you can describe this man to law enforcement or whoever. So I did write about that because, gosh, I didn't know that was a thing until I was experiencing it. But I tried to tread lightly when talking about things like other people and their
Yeah.
traumas. So like
Yeah.
Zane's ex-wives and his family. I try to skim over a lot of that stuff just because it's not my experience to share.
Yes.
Yeah.
But still, thank you for sharing what you did. How has
Oh,
writing served as a tool for your healing? And what kind of advice would you give to other survivors who might want to write their stories?
yeah, I would say there's no reason not to try it. Unless it's not safe, of course. But what I learned in support group is that one girl didn't get closure because there was no court case. He wasn't in prison. Being raped, went nowhere. So what her therapist told her to do was write about it and then burn it. And she did that, and she said that it felt like closure to her because now she wrote her story, she burned it, and now she felt like in control of what happened. And that was kind of her ending. So I think my recommendation is just to write it. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. But you might find that it's really cathartic to write about. So I journaled, and every time something happened, whether it was a court hearing or a falling out with my mom and dad, or Zane being sentenced, I wrote about it, and that's where I came up with my memoir. Is all of my journal entries. I just put all my journal entries together, and it was enough to be a book. So it was a pretty natural process for me.
Thank you for that. So you founded Wish, We Inspire Survivor Healing Inc. What inspired you to start this nonprofit, and what impact do you hope it can have for survivors?
Yeah, so we have done a couple of item drives where our local
Okay.
community donated items to give to like women's shelters and other nonprofits basically. So we've donated some items to a nonprofit organization in a neighboring town. We've collected gift cards, and I thought about it because when I was raped, I had what I needed because of my family. But not everybody has that. And so I just wanted to make sure that anybody that lived in my area had what they needed. So we collected things like bras, gift cards, lotions. We collected shoes because sometimes you go to the hospital, and they have to take all of your clothes for evidence, and, then you have nothing. So I wanted to start it because I just honestly, I want to dedicate my life to this work because I know it's helping so many people because that's what they tell me. And also, it feels good for me too. I've learned that giving back feels so good. And it's almost like a snowball effect. Like writing one book felt good, but writing two books that can help double the amount of people feels even better. So I haven't been as active with my nonprofit since I've had my daughter, um, with with my boyfriend. She's now 2.5 years old, so it hasn't been a very
Congrats.
nonprofit recently. But
Congrats.
what was that?
I said congrats. I didn't know you had a daughter too. Lovely.
Yeah,
Beautiful. How
yeah.
beautiful.
She's a little spitfire. I love her so much.
Oh.
Yeah. So we've been busy, and I've been just trying to focus on family, of course. I still work full time at my clinic in town here. But then when I can, around my family time, I still write and do public speaking and try to dedicate the rest of my spare time to to advocating and just bettering the community around sexual assault.
And as a member of the Survivor Advisory Group to the Governor of Minnesota, what changes have you advocated for to better support sexual assault survivors?
Yeah, so that group has since dissolved. But when I was on the group, we were able to look at some bills that were going to be passed, and we were able to talk about changes that needed to happen in the community and present it to people in the government. I don't have a really good description, but we were able to basically review things from a survivor's perspective, which was really empowering that Minnesota's government cared about what victims thought about the things they were passing. It was extremely empowering, and I'm really glad I got to be part of that.
So your work with End Violence Against Women International focuses on educating professionals and communities, right? So what's the one key lesson you shared with law enforcement or service providers about supporting survivors?
Yeah, I really love their Start by Believing campaign. Boy, so I learned that, like I said earlier, if somebody comes to you and says, I've been sexually assaulted or I've been raped, the number one thing you can do, if you don't know what to do, the first thing you can and should do is just start by believing them. Whether you're a cop, whether you're a friend or family member, a lawyer, if you don't know what to do, or either way, is just start by believing them. So I really like to promote that organization anytime I talk because I've learned so much through them, and I've been able to, talk about I was believed and now here I am. So I think if the first thing people do is start by believing you, it empowers a victim to continue on their healing journey because they're believed. If you're not believed from the get-go, I don't know what your healing journey is going to look like. But if you're believed from the get-go, it might become a success story, or you might have a good outcome, or you might be able to heal because that's what happened to me. And I'm just so thankful that I was believed.
Yeah, it is so inspiring just listening to you. And I'm sure it must be for the people you've spoken to at events like the Strong Her event and Sexual Assault Awareness Month dinners. What's it like to share your story in person? And do you get the right response from the audiences?
Yes, yes. Boy, I love public speaking. I just spoke in Utah at their Northern Utah Conference to End Violence. And then I also just spoke in Texas at the Safer East Texas training. I meet so many people, and it is It's so rewarding because in the audience, I know I'm talking to cops and lawyers and victim advocates, but I also know a lot of people in the audience are also survivors themselves. So through me telling my story and all the details and, the investigation, the court process, all that, I know I'm able to educate simply through telling my experience, but also validate that when they do a good job, it can be okay in the end. But then at the same time, I know I'm connecting with probably at least a quarter of the audience simply through the fact that they're survivors as well. It's really, really rewarding. And I always have very positive feedback. And I really hope it's something I continue to do and continue to do more of just because, boy, it's a great being a nurse, but being able to talk about what happened to me and use it for the greater good is so much more rewarding for me.
It's truly inspiring. So you've emphasized the importance of being an ally and believing in survivors. So what can listeners do to support survivors and victims within our own communities?
Yeah, one thing I always like to mention, I wish there were more people that didn't look like me and didn't have the same educational background or the same income level or the same, sexual identity as me. I wish there was a bigger variety of people that were able to share their success stories because I think that too many Native American women are missing and murdered. I think that there are too many just marginalized communities that aren't believed and aren't treated the same as people that look like me. I think it might have a lot to do with why I have a success story. And I just like to touch on that as well, that I wish more people with diversity had good outcomes, honestly.
You have such a kind heart. You are so sweet.
I appreciate
I'm just the words now. I mean, you are a victim yourself, and you are so considerate of others, and so that is such a beautiful thing. I'm moved beyond words.
I appreciate that. I think I just I was raped. I had somebody point a gun at my head and say they're going to kill me and kill my son. But I lived and I survived. And like, if I can use my voice to like help other people who might not have a voice because they aren't believed and all that, then I'm going to do it. I'm an anomaly for so many reasons. Not everybody is rapist is dumb enough to video record themselves raping their victims. And mine was. So I'm going to take advantage of that. You know what I mean?
Yes, Daniel, I believe your voice and your work, your story is making a lot of difference in the lives of victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. I believe that at the deepest core of my heart. And I think you're doing such a beautiful thing and contributing in every way possible and empowering women, empowering victims of sexual assault. So I really want to celebrate you for that. And I would say, I hope you do well in your future also. I wanted to ask you about your work on your sixth book now. Can you give us a sneak peek into what you're exploring in your upcoming projects?
Yeah. My most recent book, it's called Reclaiming Power. I interviewed the 12 sexual assault survivors. My next project actually is I'm rewriting my memoir because in
Okay.
my memoir, I give the rapist an alias, and I don't think he deserves that. So I'm going to rewrite the book using his real name because he was charged. He's in prison. Everything that I say in the book is 100% true. So I'm going to use his real name and I'm just going to rewrite the book in that regard. That's essentially my next project, other than some upcoming speaking events that I have. So, yeah, I'm just really excited to keep going on this path, making for a better community and society for women and all victims.
I honor your truth and your honesty, Daniel. I truly do.
Thank you. I
So,
appreciate you.
you're welcome. If you could speak directly to someone who's silently carrying the weight of sexual assault, what would you say to them to offer hope or courage?
I would say that you are not alone. I believe you and I stand with you. I would encourage anybody that has a story to, use resources and tell somebody. I know for not everybody, it's not always safe to report. But if you use your resources, you can at least talk to a victim advocate, and then with that person, you can come up with the best choice for yourself. I'm not here to tell people what to do. I'm just here to empower people to make the healthiest and best choices for themselves. And I wish I could give everybody just a big old hug right now and just say, you're not alone. I'm here with you and I believe you.
I'm actually crying.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
well, I
So,
appreciate it.
because I think you're so beautiful from the inside and on the outside too. So
Thank you.
I do hope that your work reaches more hearts and heals more and more survivors become warriors like you and become strong like you, a lioness. What's your vision for the future for yourself and your advocacy work? And how do you hope to see this conversation around sexual violence evolve?
Yeah, my long-term goal is to continue writing books and speaking about my experience. I'm simply an expert at my own experience, and thus far it's proven to help professionals in the field. So I hope to continue that. Regarding sexual assault, gosh, I wish that rapists would stop raping. I wish that sexual assault abusers would stop abusing. And I think the more light we shed on it, the more we're going to be able to understand why it happens, which is the number one cause is the abuser's choice. But maybe there's some way that we can look into prevention or whatever it may be. I don't know.
I think the more brave souls speak up like you and name and shame the abuser, the more I think lesser the victims you'll find in this world because they need to be afraid that they'll be held accountable.
Right, I agree. I think if more abusers are held accountable, maybe people will stop being so open to abusing because they'll know that they're going to prison for it. But right now, that's just not the case. You can rape or child molest or whatever it is and get away with it. But if we talk about it more and we report it more, maybe the more people will be in prison for it, maybe the less it'll happen. It's just a theory, but maybe, that would be ideal for sure.
Yes, it would be a beautiful utopia, but you never know.
Yep.
Maybe sometime in our children's future.
Yep.
Do you have any last parting words, any special anecdotes, or something you never shared about this journey? Any secret you would like to share with our
Oh,
listeners? Any secret that you've never told before?
oh gosh.
Something about yourself? Yeah.
Oh gosh. Put me on the spot
Did
here.
I put you on the spot?
Well, uh,
Only if you're comfortable.
I can't say I've never said this before, but for listeners, if I had the power to go back in time and undo what happened to me, I wouldn't because I like the person who I am now better than the person I was before I was raped. I would take my son out of the situation, but I wouldn't
Yes.
undo what happened to me because I think that my life is better now. I think I'm able to, help the community more now than I was before. I feel like I have a purpose in life now, whereas before, like I said, I was content. But I'm not glad it happened, but at the same time, I wouldn't undo it. Because if it wasn't me that was his victim, it would be somebody else. And I'd rather take their pain, use it for the good, I guess.
That is inspiring. I know I've said this many times, but it truly is. I think you're iconic, Danielle.
Oh,
I
gosh.
think you are a once in a lifetime person, once in a lifetime soul. We don't get to meet women like you. It's very rare to come out so strong and powerful and then empowering others and speaking up and being the strength for other survivors to speak up in turn. And you moved me to tears because
You're gonna make me cry now.
I've experienced things in my childhood that I never talk about. And as you said many times, especially for children, they're not believed.
Yep.
So, yes. So, I hope um, people get more support, victims and survivors get more support, especially in the form of just listening and hearing them out and believing them. That is
Yeah.
all the victim needs.
Hmm.
So, On that note, thank you, Daniel, for sharing your incredible journey with us today. From your roots in Rochester to the profound resilience you've shown as a survivor, as an author, as an advocate, your memoir, Four Pounds of Pressure, and your work with Wish and EVAWI are truly transforming lives and giving voice to survivors and inspiring change. And your work has inspired me and it's moved me to tears. I mean, not just your work, your nature, your character, and that you're still so pure at heart, and that it didn't allow that incident to taint you, and that is so rare. You're a diamond. Your courage and heart remind us all of the power of healing and standing together and supporting each other. So, to my Awakened Souls listeners, please check out Danielle's books and support her mission at Wish We Inspire Survivor Healing.
Like many victims of sexual trauma, though the ordeal ended for Danielle, she still continues to face the toll of the trauma this may have caused her son, family members, and the ripple effect it continues to have on her life. Her attacker remained unidentified for nearly 4 months until DNA evidence led to his arrest. Zane Pedersen was someone she had known for many years, a figure from her past who was finally sentenced in 2021 to 50 months in prison. But for Danielle, the sentence was also hers and her son's, a lifelong journey of carrying the weight of that horrific night. To know more about Danielle, please find her website and social media links in the show notes. For those interested to buy her books and follow her speaking engagements, do go on to her website www.danielleleukam.com. You can follow her on Instagram at Danielle Leukam and also on Facebook and Twitter or X.
Thank you, Danielle, for joining us on Awaken Souls podcast, where stories like yours awaken hope and strength in us all. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I appreciate you more than I can ever say. Thank you so much.
Namaste. Namaste, Danielle. God bless you.
You are listening to Jenny Clark on Awakened Souls.